Welcome to the ProfitLed podcast, where we discover proven growth strategies for bootstrapped entrepreneurs from the people who have done it before to help you accelerate your business. The ProfitLed podcast is brought to you by eWebinar, the leading automated webinar platform, which could save you from doing the same webinar over and over again. From sales demos to onboarding to training, eWebinar turns any video into an interactive webinar that you can set on a recurring schedule or make available on demand, which means you can do hundreds of webinars without ever needing to actually be there to host them live. This podcast is a forum for the unsung heroes of SaaS, the founders and others behind bootstrapped startups who are creative and resourceful enough to forge a pathway to success. Here is where they get to share everything they learned along the way, so you can benefit from their experience and find success in your own ventures too.
Welcome to ProfitLed, the podcast for bootstrap entrepreneurs looking to make it happen. My name is Melissa Kwan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of eWebinar and your host. It's important to me that this podcast feels less like an interview and more like a conversation, like the kind that you would have in a bar over a couple of drinks. In fact, the guests that I look for are the kind of people who I would want to have this kind of conversation with. People who've built amazing companies with limited resources, not unicorns or hyper-growth mega superstars, but founders who've struggled and succeeded to create a great business that makes lots and lots of people's lives better every day. In my mind, they're the unsung heroes of SaaS. And as far as what I want for our listeners, I hope that at the end, they will think, wow, that person made it happen, and I bet I can too. So while it's utterly unrealistic for me to record this podcast in a bar and invite my guest to meet me there, I thought at the very least that I could buy him a drink today. So here we are with my very special guest, Trevor Larson from Nectar. Hey, Trevor, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing, Melissa?
Good. I'm excited for our conversation. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And as you know, Venmo'd you a few days ago and asked you to bring your favorite drink to enjoy while we chat today. So what'd you get?
So I got myself, not necessarily my favorite drink, but this ultra peachy keen Monster. And I am not an energy drink guy. I haven't had one in years. And then like a month ago, we have a gas station right by our new office and all of our team goes over there. They showed me this drink. Like I said, I don't like Monsters. I'm more of like a health nut and I don't get these super often, but the taste on this thing is incredible. I wish there was like a non-energy drink with this kind of taste. It's so good. So I'm excited to crack it open and then chat with you.
So it's more like a treat then, because I know you're a health nut.
Yeah, it's kind of a treat.
Yeah, I got myself this blood orange San Pellegrino because I actually have this permanently stocked in my house. It's a crowd pleaser as like a mixer, and we host a lot of things at our place, but I've actually never tried it on its own. So let's see.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, all right, it's time for some ASMR magic.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I also got ice as well. So I'm just going to drop it into my glass. All right, I'm going to open my drink now, so you can too.
Okay. Oof. What about some cheers?
Absolutely. All right.
You've got a knack for this ASMR stuff.
I just learned it a few weeks ago. All right, cheers. Let's see.
Yep, cheers.
All right, it's definitely better as a mixer, but not bad.
As good as always.
At some point,
I love it.
There's going to be drink sponsors on this podcast. So, Trevor, today I'd like to dig into your story to start because I've known you actually for almost 2 years now. You were one of our first customers.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you were one of our first customers at eWebinar who found us on Product Hunt, but we never got a chance to dig deeper into your backstory. But what I really want to do after that is actually dive into two prominent strategies that I know you use to grow your business that you're also very vocal about. The first being building a buyer-centric sales process and creating a culture around recruiting and retaining the best people, which I know you've recently started sharing more about. So with that, Trevor, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and the backstory of why you started Nectar?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Trevor Larson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nectar. Nectar there's been a long journey that's kind of led to Nectar, and I won't get into all of that because it'll take up the whole time we have. But basically, we had some big pivots. We were scrappy. We were bootstrapped for a couple years. And then Nectar kind of happened as part of one of these pivots about 2.5 years ago now. And what we do is we're an employee recognition and rewards platform that focuses on helping enable cultures, make people feel more valued and appreciated and trusted, and to build like a sense of purpose and community in the workforce. We were one of the few kind of benefactors of the pandemic that happened in 2020, which it occurred like right after we launched our MVP. But after kind of people started buying software again, after kind of a few months of pause on spend, the huge shift towards remote work that happened overnight really led us to a lot of success because people started really looking for ways to drive culture remotely and keep people connected and engaged and feeling valued. So we definitely have been able to ride a really exciting wave when it comes to the future of work and how we work these days. But we were also able to just focus on the right things, I think, and control what we could control that would eventually lead to the growth that we've had.
So in the beginning, can you describe a bit more about like what the team was like who was involved from the beginning and how long it actually took you guys to build that first version someone paid for?
So we started that in 2017. So it's been about 5 years, and it was something a little different. It was still like the same type of buyer. It was more like employee benefits and perks focused than kind of what we do now. But it was myself and two co-founders, one who has like a finance and operations background, one who has more of a sales background, and myself. We also brought in a CTO to help build everything out. When we first started, we didn't have somebody technical on the team. And so we'd hired it out to like the cheapest resources we could find, people just out of one of the like coding boot camps. And honestly, looking back, like as bad of an experience as that was, because everything was like really buggy that we shipped, it was the only way we could get something off the ground with the limited resources that we had. So it helped us kind of get that proof of concept and get our first few customers, so that when we did get a little bit of angel funding in the beginning, we were able to bring on our kind of technical co-founder.
Mm-hmm. So your two other co-founders, they're not technical. And then you hired like, I guess maybe some contractors or like people right out of boot camp to build that first version.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
With that buggy version, like how did you guys get your first few customers? That's always a hard like 0 to 1 thing, right?
Yeah, the 0 to 1 is so hard. Just had to be really, really scrappy. And I don't think you can like prescribe it to any startup outside of just the mindset of being scrappy and like saying, I'm somehow going to do this, whether I have to knock doors or send a million cold emails. Ours was interesting, and there's a lot of luck involved too. For example, we won this like university startup competition, which gave us a ton of validation. And they wrote us like a $4,000 check, which at the time we're like, oh my gosh, we're rich, But my mom was like bragging about it in the office. She lives a state away from me. I'm in Utah. She's in Arizona. She was bragging in the office to like some coworkers about how her son had won this college startup competition or whatever. Her CEO overheard the conversation and kind of what the product was. And he's like, wait, that sounds really interesting. You should fly him out here so I can see a demo. And so I flew out there for a demo, and I show up to the office. My mom lets me into this office, and the CEO had catered lunch and had like the executive team there. And I'm literally like pitching with my mom in the room this product that was pretty much nothing at the time. It like hosted discounts and perks on this really buggy app. And the CEO's like, well, how much does it cost? And I straight face was like, it's $4 per employee per month. And he's like, oh, perfect. How soon can we get started? And I'm like in a month or so, So we kept building, and we had to go get discounts kind of in their area at the time, do a lot of like unscalable things. But yeah, I remember getting that first check in, and it was for 80 users or something at $4 per employee. It was like $250 a month or something. But getting that first check coming in the mail was just that 0 to 1 feeling that you can't forget. And then from there, we were just pounding the pavement, talking to companies. Like we would walk into like basically knock on company's door and walk in, and we were able to get like the city that we live in, like all their employees using it, and slowly started kind of building that way.
That's pretty cool. So that is actually the opposite of what you and me are really advocating for now. That's the opposite of an on-demand demo, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. It was so unscalable and it was all sweat equity, right? Like we didn't really have any funding but we weren't paying ourselves either. So we were just like, we just got to do what we got to do to get off the ground,
Yeah. So how did you from that point on, like continue to build revenue, right? Because obviously that is not scalable. Like getting a check in the mail instead of Stripe charging every month, like that is not scalable, right? So how did that process, like of getting your first few customers, evolve to a more kind of automated, online driven process?
It was a long journey. It took years before we could really get there. I consider myself a reformed SDR, actually. So I started my career and I was introduced to tech and SaaS over at Qualtrics as an SDR, and I was only there for like 6 or 7 months. And one of my co-founders who runs sales, he was over at Bamboo HR as an SDR, and he only lasted like 7 or 8 months. It's a soul-sucking position, but that's all we knew, right? And so we were just doing cold emails and cold calls for so long, but we realized like what we were doing, even though we had a handful of customers and we brought in $60,000 or $70,000 worth of ARR, the market just wasn't huge for what we were doing. So that's what eventually led us to the pivot to what we're doing now, where it was more of an established market. We felt more purpose-driven, and we could make a bigger kind of dent in the universe with the employee recognition and rewards space. But yeah, I guess what it took to answer your question was right when COVID hit, the day the world shut down completely. I think it was March 12th, 2020 or March 11th or something. NBA shut down, Disneyland, like everything, all in that day. We sat back. Oh yeah, and that same day we had a handful of potential customers in the pipeline that just emailed us within a few hours like, hey, we're freezing budgets. Like, we can't talk to you anymore. And I remember sitting with my co-founders when everyone left the office and we're like, what the heck is going on? Like, what do we do? And that's the moment when I was like, man, we need to figure out inbounds. Like, we need to figure out how to bring customers to us because it's been 3 years and we're burning a lot of cash. It's not working. It's not efficient. Like, what's this inbound thing all about? And I think I have a lot of weaknesses, but one of my strengths is just looking at a problem and going and figuring it out and getting 80-90% proficient at it before I pass it off. I said, I'm going to figure out inbound. And so we started with review sites like G2 and Capterra. And we had a couple hundred users. So we'd reach out to them, get them to add reviews. And then once we got to 100 or 200 reviews on those sites, then we started like running ads against it on Capterra. And within like a week or two, we were getting inbound demos from like Citibank and TED Talks and like a bunch of big brands because that lent us like social proof, right? So from there, like we stacked up that channel and then we were like, okay, what else can we do? We're going to get some partnerships online with like relevant HR blogs and we're going to get SEO off the ground because we had no SEO strategy or any backlinks. And once you get something that's working, at first it was like 5 demos a month, 20 demos a month. Now we're getting over 300, like 250 to 300 inbound demos a month. But it was just like, you get one thing working, move on to the next. And don't spread yourself too thin at the beginning. You really have to focus.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. So you guys figured out review sites and you use those review sites to like their offering to run ads against your own reviews. Is that what happened? Because I know they have like an ad offering as well.
Yeah, we would use their ad offering, like Capterra specifically, that worked really well. And that just starts building this halo effect, right? Like people are starting to see your brand. They're starting to recognize it as one of the top ones. They're reading the reviews that are really good. And obviously you have to have a good product and happy customers for that to work, or it can totally backfire, right? But we were fortunate enough to have both of those things.
So how much money did you spend? Did you allocate per month on that?
It's probably like $500 a month to $1,000 a month was it.
But once you prove that actually gets inbounds and like good leads, then you can just add more budget onto it.
Yeah, exactly. It was a test. Everything's a test at the beginning to see what works, right? And now we'll spend upwards of $100K a month on, marketing. Yeah.
And have you guys hit profitability yet?
No, we have not. It's not really our aim at the moment. We like to stay within striking distance. So we're always 3 to 6 months away, and then we'll hire new team members to help us scale faster, and then we'll kind of slow it down. So it's this constant like ebb and flow as we scale. At any point in time, we could kind of press pause on hiring and spend and be able to get to profitability. But right now, the goal is to like thread the needle of growing fast and being default to live, as Paul Graham talks about, but not necessarily like chasing profitability at the moment.
Yeah. And when did you guys start paying yourself? Because in the beginning, it was just sweat equity, right? So when did you start getting something?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first 2 to 2.5 years, absolutely nothing, right? My wife was paying all the bills. She was working a couple jobs, bless her heart. She was incredible support, so shout out to her. So then around year 3, we started paying ourselves $500 a month, so $6K a year salary. And then after we raised a little bit more money from some angel investors, we bumped it to like a $40,000 salary. And then we've had kind of like performance milestones as we hit certain benchmarks. We like give ourselves raises, and now we're like at a really healthy like market rate salary for a Series A type company that has a couple million in ARR. So that was a path of patience, and it was really rough, but it was definitely worth it. And it's hard too, right? When you see, we have a lot of friends that were buying nice cars, nice houses. They were out of school. They'd got their first corporate job and were making good money. And you kind of have to suppress those desires because you can't have a personal burn rate that's too high, right? Otherwise, you're going to hit a wall and you're going to be done, right? You're not going to be able to continue pursuing your startup.
I went through that in my previous company. I mean, I still don't pay myself today, but it's because I sold my previous company. And when you say path of patience, it's not just for you, it's also from your family and from your partner as well. And I've seen relationships also not working out because it was too long of a trek. So definitely props to your wife there. As a bootstrap company, in the beginning, what were some of the things that you prioritized and some of the things that you just couldn't invest in?
Being bootstrapped, it's hard, but it's also really rewarding. It helps you be very disciplined and very strategic about every move, which allows us to be scrappy. And that's one of our core values at Nectar, is being scrappy and resourceful, like this narrative of like small but mighty. I guess you just have to be, like I said, more disciplined about your growth channels and what you can test at any given time. Like test one thing at a time from marketing inbound perspective, and like wait 2 or 3 months to see if it's working, and if it's ROI positive and it has a good like CAC payback, then you can start throwing more resources at that while you start testing some other ones that you're not really sure what the CAC payback will be there, or if it will make sense for your business. Every business is a little different. You have different runway, you have different kind of funding options. So I'd say it also helped us be really customer focused, like making sure that we're talking to customers frequently, making sure we're taking care of them, adding that like personal touch in there. So I think the more funding you add, you get so focused on just like throwing money at problems that you're not thinking of like the best way to do something in the most like cost effective way. And for me, I've kind of realized and learned like this growth at all cost mindset is actually really costly, and not all growth is created equal, right? Like there's such thing as capital efficient growth, and that's what you really want.
Yeah. I mean, I think money can hide a problem, right? Like you can buy a lot of leads, but do they stick around, right? But when you're constantly pumping money into it, it just kind of masks it for the moment. What would you say were some inflection points in your business that you really felt kind of changed the course of your journey?
The main one was our pivot to Nectar. So we were called PerkNow before. We were a discount platform. When we switched to Nectar, it was like a full, like brand new, it was essentially starting a brand new company, but under the same entity. And that was a huge inflection point because it went from like this dying business that there wasn't a big enough market for to this really hot market that we feel like, we have the best product in the market and have a real chance at winning, even though we don't have the same resources as our competition.
Yeah. How many customers did you have when you made that pivot, and did you keep those customers? Because you would have had to communicate that change to them, right? So what happened there?
We've kept about half, I don't know, we probably had 20 to 30 customers. We have about half of them still using the old platform. So we never fully sunset it. We just don't put any resources towards it. So we still have, a handful of those still going. A lot of them we were able to kind of shift over to the new product. Some of them already had a solution for that or weren't interested, right? last month we passed 500 customers, which was super exciting.
Wow, awesome. So looking back, what are some of the things that you would have done differently? So maybe some things that you shouldn't have spent time and resources on.
I wish we would have started inbound sooner and figuring that out. There's just a lot of things as a founder, like you only have so much time. One of our angel investors, when they first put money in, they're like, hey, we have this guy who, for our business, which, they had like a $400 million exit, fully bootstrapped. So like an incredible journey that they were on. And they had this like demand gen guy that was really good. And he was kind of later in his career, but they're like, this guy's a genius. Like we worked with him. He's now consulting. So we could bring him in and he'll get your outbound going. And we had nothing as far as, inbound. We had nothing as far as inbound. And we're leaning on these investors and their advice and the reference they gave us. And we're like, oh, this is automatic. We pay him this much and he'll figure out inbound for us. And we can just kind of like, this is our clear path to success, right? What ended up happening was we were paying this guy like $10,000 a month. And he's probably great. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to like throw shade in any way at all, but it's such a nuanced thing, like for consultants to go from business to business and try to get something off the ground. And we ended up like 6-7 months in having 0 leads to show from it. Like we had nothing to show for it. Anyways, we ended up having to let this guy go, but we'd spent like $50,000 or $60,000 down the drain. So I think one of the things that we learned is even though you have mentors and advisors and investors that have been there before, they've all have what they consider a clear path to success, but it's not the same for everyone. Every business is so different. It's so nuanced that like you have to take everyone's advice for a grain of salt, even your board members, right? And at the end of the day, you're the one in control. And as a founder, you basically have to figure everything out yourself. Like you can't ever outsource any part of your business at the beginning and think that like somebody's going to take it over and figure it out for you. Like you have to do it. And that was probably one of my biggest like learnings and takeaways that I've had so far is like you go figure it out. And once you get something off the ground, then pass it off to somebody more experienced than you. Give them a little playbook, but then let them kind of get after it. And that's led to a ton of our successes, is that one kind of learning or insight.
I've also had experiences like that. And I think what people have to know is like getting a 0 to 1 startup off the ground is very different than like bringing in an experienced salesperson to sell a product that's already very mature with product messaging that already works. Like those are really just two different people. And this is actually just a lesson I still learn like nowadays, right? You think like, okay, you pay someone, they're going to figure out SEO or they're going to figure out writing great content. Like
I promise you they won't.
Yeah.
I promise you nobody will figure that out. You have to figure it out. And so I think your biggest strength as a founder has to be a love for learning and like the desire to go learn and figure things out and try new things. And in today's world, there's an incredible amount of resources at your disposal that you can, like some of the top people in their fields are giving out free advice on Twitter and LinkedIn, or they have $100 course you can buy. And like, they're so much better than like the gurus out there. So you can learn a ton and then go apply it and figure it out, get it off the ground and then pass it off.
Yeah. On that note, I've realized that we've outsourced backlinking for so long. I don't understand that process. To the point where, like, I just found this company, Respona, who I also talked to their founder on this show. And
hey, I know them. We use them as well. They're awesome. Yeah,
really?
That's really cool.
Yeah. So talked to Farzad like actually last week, and now I'm going through all their resources to learn what this actually is. So even if I intend to hire someone out, at least I can give them a base for what I'm looking for. Because we're just spending way too much money on a process that like I actually don't think we're doing very efficiently right now, or really getting very high quality content. So on that note, I wanted to switch gears to your strategy around building a buyer-centric sales process, which is actually how we met and the reason you found eWebinar in the first place. So can you talk more about your philosophy around this and how you arrived at it in the first place? Hey, I'd like to take a second here to talk about my own company, eWebinar, and our mission to rescue people from what I call webinar hell, to give them back their time and save them literally hundreds of hours every month through webinar automation. If your sales team is tired of doing the same demo over and over for unqualified leads or worse, prospects who don't even show up, an on-demand demo powered by eWebinar can help them get their time back so they can close more deals. If you're doing customer onboarding and training on repeat, eWebinar can help you automate those so you never have to do them live again. Customer success teams are using eWebinar to run hundreds of sessions every single month without a live host. Why don't you give our product a try and see for yourself? Visit ewebinar.com to join our own on-demand demo or to sign up for a free trial. All right, now that I've gotten that on my system, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, as a startup entering a hot space, it can be really hard to differentiate because your product is a couple years behind, your experience in the space and your knowledge of it's behind. So you have to go through and just find areas where you can be 1% better, right? It's that whole idea of the aggregation of marginal gains, and I'm a big proponent of that. One thing I noticed was just in our market specifically and with our competition, but just like SaaS in general, it's so hard to buy and it's such an annoying process, right? Like it's crazy to me that if you want a Tesla, you can just go to tesla.com and click a few buttons and like, boom, you have a Tesla showing up at your house in a couple months or whatever. Yet like buying B2B software is just this excruciating process of you go to book a demo, you fill out a form, you submit it, and it just goes into this like dark abyss where you're not sure when or if somebody will ever reach out to you. And in the moment, like you have a problem in the moment you want to solve. And so you're like, you really want to figure it out. And you're like, in 3 days from now, maybe I don't care about this problem as much, or I've already found a solution for it. So I don't want somebody reaching out to me then. Then if they do reach out, you want to book a demo or see a demo. Nope, you got to talk to a BDR, an SDR who's going to interrogate you like the FBI or something, right? And they're like trained to not give you any of the information you want. They just ask you a bunch of questions to like qualify or disqualify you. Wait a couple more days until you actually talk to an AE. And it's just this long, drawn out process, which on their end, I don't see the benefit of because it really bogs down their system and it's not super cost efficient to have like a human being who's like having to filter through all of your leads. But also like from the buyer perspective, there's so much friction. It's not a good process. So I tend to gravitate, I've noticed, towards the companies that make the buying journey and the process really easy. Another problem is like pricing is rarely on the website, right? Which is also really annoying. And I understand some enterprise solutions that are really custom, like can't do that, right? But yeah, for us, we're looking through that and we're like, how can we just remove all the friction from the buying process? And that's going to help us because we have limited resources and we're not going to pay somebody to like go and filter through all these leads and qualify or disqualify them. But for the buyer, it's like, we want to be the easiest one to buy, the easiest one for them to go through this process with and to like help them through it. And so a few ways that we do that is, yes, we have like transparent pricing. We have a free trial where they can play with the product. When they book a demo, it's not just this form fill that like says somebody will reach out soon. We use Chili Piper so they can book directly on one of our account executives' calendars. So they know exactly when they're going to have the demo and they can have it 30 minutes from now or 3 days from now. And then we just try to provide as much free, ungated resources to them as possible so that they can self-educate. Because at the end of the day, like in 2022, buyers want to be able to self-educate. And there's so many resources online for them that like sales no longer has to be the gatekeeper of information like they used to be, where it's like, I'm not going to tell you anything until you come talk to our team, right? That doesn't work anymore. And so it's better to just be upfront, give them the resources they need, depending on where they're at in their journey and their process, and just be seen as that trusted advisor, that thought leader that's going to help them decide and implement the right solution, whether it's you or a competitor or whoever else, right?
It's funny how transparency can be such a great differentiator and people just don't realize that. Like you talk about like gating demos, gating content, not having pricing. Like not only are you making people jump through hoops and annoying them, you're also not allowing them to make a decision on whether they want to waste more of your time.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, exactly right. You didn't tell me to do this, but I do want to give a quick plug for eWebinar because I was blown away when I found it on Product Hunt. It was something I've been looking for a while because in my mind, I'm like, there's so many buyers out there that people don't like to talk to a sales rep or they're not quite ready for that. Like they'd like to see more before they do. And yeah, you can have them sign up for a free trial and play around with the product. But what if you could have this basically like robotic account executive, right? Who's showing them the demo, like a demo replay basically, to where they can decide like, hey, I'm not ready to talk to a sales rep yet, but I want to see the product. And so we've been able to use eWebinar to kind of automate that replay. And it also has like the chat functionality in the side so they can ask questions that our reps can respond to in real time. That's been an awesome resource when it comes to self-education. And we've had tons of great feedback from buyers that they love that. It saves us time and resource. It makes us more efficient. But they just love the transparency and they love that we just kind of give that out for anybody to see.
Yeah. I mean, also to add to your point, well, first of all, thank you for the plug. Like I don't do live demos either, but it's also because my product's price point starts at $49.
Right. You can't afford to do it.
Yeah, I can't afford to do it. I can't afford to have a salesperson or even an SDR, especially as a bootstrap startup. Like when I need to answer questions one-on-one, like if I really need to hop on the phone, like I will absolutely do that. But I can't pay a good sales rep nearly enough for the product price point that I'm at. So these are kind of the companies where like automating your demo and just letting people see it at their moment of intent is so helpful. So using this strategy, like how would you say this has helped you grow Nectar? Like when you compare what you're doing now to, I guess, what you were doing before?
Yeah, good question. I know like qualitatively, we get that feedback all the time from customers. Like you were the easiest to buy. You were so straightforward. You got rid of all of like the unnecessary friction in the process. And we're just faster, right? Like they'll book a demo for the next day with us. Meanwhile, the competitors are reaching out to have their BDRs talk to them in 2 or 3 days from now. So like they're pretty far in the evaluation process by the time they talk to anyone else because of how like speedy we are with things. But yeah, I think more than anything, like it's the mindset, right? The mindset and the approach of like, we want to be buyer-centric. And yeah, there's tactics that get us there, like booking a demo directly and like transparent pricing and going straight to an account executive versus a BDR. But like at the end of the day, you just have to have that mindset of like, how do we make this super easy to buy so we're not like constantly kicking against the pricks? And if you do that, you'll start identifying tools like eWebinar or ideas around doing free trials or implementing some of those other tactics that I'd mentioned before.
I mean, a good place to start is just asking yourself, like, how would I want to buy, right? There's 100%. Such a disconnect between like, if I'm a seller, I want you to come to me and I don't want to give you anything. But if I'm a buyer, you better give me everything and not annoy me. But if we can align the two together, then I think you just have more clarity on delivering your own customers the experience that you would want yourself.
Nailed it. Yeah, that's the key. It comes down to the golden rule heuristic, right? It's like sell the way you want to buy.
I can't even tell you the number of times that like I have gotten my COO and my CTO on a demo because I had to book the demo and then realizing that it was just a discovery call where the person we're talking to doesn't even know the specs of the product. So then now they get off the phone. They're like, well, why did you have to put me on this? But I thought it was the actual demo. Nowhere in my mind did I think, oh, this was just like a discovery call. And it's never framed that way, right? They just kind of get you on the call and they kind of like trick you into sharing all this info. And then you ask them a question and then they have no idea.
Yeah. Anytime I book a demo to like check out a software, they'll like follow up with their booking link. I'm like, guys, I want an actual demo from an account executive, please. And they're like, sometimes they're like, oh, we can't do that. You have to talk to one of our product specialists first. I'm like, no, I want a demo. Do you want me to buy this or not? You know?
Yeah. I mean, what would you say to someone who is afraid of oversharing, especially to their competitors? Because I'm guessing that's probably why people gate a lot of that information. So having now this experience, like what would you say to those companies?
There's always going to be trade-offs. And I think the pros typically outweigh the cons when it comes to oversharing. There's probably stuff, I mean, you have to lean into being a little uncomfortable, but you don't have to like share all the secret sauce or anything. So I think it's different, like case by case, but there's definitely pros that outweigh the cons and like a competitive advantage because everyone else is thinking that way. And usually your success comes from flipping the script and like flipping things on their head, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that your competitors already know what you're doing. And even when you are demoing a product, like you're not going into your roadmap or why you build certain things. And, you know, we just had a competitor like a kind of a frenemy, I guess, recently say, hey, do you guys have a demo? And I'm like, hey, it's on our website. Like you can just join it yourself. And I just assume like, because when I was doing market research, we signed up for everyone else's product and completely picked it apart, right? So I can only imagine someone's done that to us. And there's no amount of gating, because we do have a self-serve product that we can do that would stop that from happening.
It's true.
So what can companies start doing today if they want to adopt the strategy that you're talking about?
Once again, like it's what you said earlier about thinking like, how do I want to buy? Like I want to sell that way. And what does that mean exactly? Well, when I go to buy something, I want to book directly on an account executive's calendar. I want to know what pricing is and make sure that that's transparent. And just like look at the current journey and find areas that add friction or add time. It's an iterative process, right? You're not going to nail it from the beginning. If you have the right mindset and you just start chopping at the wood, like you'll figure it out, you'll get feedback. But yeah, I think number one is just starting with the right mindset and trying to see things from the customer prospect's perspective, and then you'll kind of build out what that looks like for your business.
So I've been following your journey on LinkedIn from a distance for a while, and I noticed a shift in the content you share. So while it started from being an advocate for transparency, which you're still doing, you're starting to share a lot about culture and the way we want to work today, which includes things like remote work, trust, autonomy. And this is the second strategy of yours that I wanted to talk about today, because I know you're an expert in it. Can you share more about this philosophy? And when did you decide to put so much emphasis on culture as a growth strategy?
Culture is very relevant to what we do at Nectar. The name Nectar actually is derived around culture, right? So nectar is the building block of honey, and it's actually like the key component that makes it sweet. And we believe that the building block of a great company is their culture, right? And what we do at Nectar through recognition, rewards, and building community is impact culture, because we believe at the end of the day, that's the biggest competitive advantage, but it's something really hard for companies to tackle. And it's something that's constantly evolving, right? Employee expectations today versus 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they're so much higher around culture. Like everyone in interviews is asking about what the company culture is. And there's a lot of, research and studies that will tell you it's more important to people than their compensation, right? Everyone needs to get paid competitively and fairly, but when they're evaluating like their options, like they want to be a culture fit and something that aligns with their values. But I think the hard part about culture is I think we innately understand what it is, but there's also common misconceptions. Like sometimes people think that a fun environment is synonymous with great culture. And even though a fun environment's important, it's only a small piece of what a healthy, like great culture is made of. So at Nectar, we want to help kind of define what culture is to make it more actionable, because culture is such a hard thing for people to actually define that it can be hard to build like deliberate strategy around. And if you don't have a deliberate strategy around it, it's just going to happen. And if it just happens, the chances of it being great are very low. And that's going to affect the type of talent you can attract. It's going to affect how productive people are and like directly impact all of your business outcomes and the retention aspect of things, right? Keeping your best people around. So that's me on the soapbox around culture. We've actually been creating our own framework on the key principles that define great culture. And it's actually the acronym CREATE. So you have connection, recognition, empathy, alignment, trust, and enablement. And those are like the 6 core pillars or principles around what makes great culture. And as we define that and we start evangelizing the framework and teaching companies and people the framework, we believe we can help them identify areas where they're kind of lacking or weak and be able to improve in those areas.
And how has putting a framework around, I guess, what you were kind of already doing, but now making it official, how has that changed your business?
It's changing our focus, right? I mean, the CREATE framework and our beliefs and points of view around culture are starting to impact and trickle down to like our product roadmap and the things that we build, right? All the content that we create on LinkedIn or on the blog or podcasts, right? and also sales conversations where our sales team can start consulting prospects about the framework and about culture. Because at the end of the day, that's typically the problem they're trying to solve. They want to build a culture that people don't want to leave. And so building kind of that thought leadership and helping companies improve their culture outside of just our product alone. Like, we believe our product does impact and help in a lot of areas of the Create framework. But bigger than that is like building this movement around how we define culture, why it's important, and how can we like impact and improve it.
Yeah. And what you guys are doing today, like, how does it differ from what other people are doing?
It's interesting because I know culture is a hot topic everywhere, and especially on LinkedIn. But the more I've looked into it, there's really not a lot of thought leaders when it comes to culture. A lot of people are talking about it because it impacts every single person on LinkedIn, or anybody that works anywhere is impacted by culture, and they have an opinion around it. They have thoughts around it. But yeah, there's just not a lot out there, and especially by way of like helping define what culture is and how we improve it. So that's kind of where we want to put our stake in the ground and be known for.
Yeah. So how do you recruit and retain talent, especially when you're up against funded startups or huge tech companies?
I mean, the answer to that, there's a number of things. It does come down to culture. When it comes to recruiting, yes, you have to be competitive with salary and comp and what that looks like. For us at a startup level, we're looking for builders and people that want to come make an impact day one. And so it's a little different, right? The pitch for joining an enterprise company is different from that of like what we're doing with a 20 to 25 person startup. And so for us, yeah, it's come make an impact day one, have a lot of autonomy over your work, learn a bunch of different skills because you're going to be wearing multiple hats. And we just have this tight-knit, fun culture where we're all in this together. And it's kind of this David and Goliath kind of narrative of we're going up against these competitors with war chests. You know, we're scrappy and we're going to win even though we have limited resources.
Yeah. So what does the future of work mean to you? Like, are there some trends or shift that you're seeing right now?
Flexibility is a huge topic right now, especially now that we're like coming out of the pandemic and with the recession. Like, it'll be interesting to see the dynamics of if companies are going to be able to force people back against what people would choose, because the labor market is kind of changing a little bit and the power shift there. I think the long-term future over the next 5 or 10 years is definitely for knowledge workers, remote work, and being able to work from wherever, and to like build your lifestyle around your work instead of work around your lifestyle. Or is that the opposite? Build your work around your lifestyle.
Yeah.
No, build your life. Yeah. Build your work around your lifestyle versus your lifestyle around your work. Yes. Thank you. I flipped that up. So there's that piece of it. I think by the end of the decade, we'll see like a shift to the 4-day work week for a majority of companies, because there's huge benefits of that. And I've been kind of carefully watching the movement there and kind of the research behind that, which so far has yielded positive results. But yeah, it's just life is short. People want to be able to have purpose in their life and not be just working all day, every day at the expense of their health and their family and their life. So I think you'll see, and you already are seeing, like the shift in mindset of the best companies are going to allow people to work wherever they'd like, whenever's best for them, and be very outcome driven versus hours driven.
Yeah. And I know that you are definitely someone who believes that you don't need a huge war chest to build a great business or a fast growing business, right? So what advice do you have for companies who want to attract the best people for their business that are still bootstrapping?
You got to look for just very specific individuals. You got to look for builders, right? And that'll resonate with the right people, is that you're looking for builders, because that's what you need at the beginning is more generalists and specialists. Giving them a piece of the upside is really important, trying to compensate them as fairly as you can. But we look for character and competence are like really, really important as we recruit, more so than like experience or background. It's what is that character that they're bringing, like that level of work ethic, and then also competence. And that doesn't mean having tons of experience, but it means like scrappiness, ability to learn, and that kind of hunger for learning and growing, right?
How do you interview for those things? Are there like certain ways that you like to interview or certain questions that you like to ask to see if people are a good fit for you guys?
I don't really do typical interviewing. Like I usually will grab lunch or just hop on a call, and I just try to get to know them, the person, like without asking all these questions about background or career. Like I never look at resumes. I'll like scan their LinkedIn, but I just try to get to know the person first. And usually you can kind of tell. The more sureproof, like bulletproof way of doing it though is like through referrals. Like most of our people have come through referrals of people that work here already. And that's probably the best way of doing it, because your people are kind of leaning into that person and kind of putting their neck out for that person, and they know the work ethic that is coming in and the character of that person and how competent they are, and if they fit kind of that DNA that we're looking for.
All right, final question. So what are some words of wisdom that you want to leave with our listeners today, bootstrap founders who are focusing on driving growth and profitability?
Yeah, I'd say be really patient, be very curious, and don't be afraid to iterate. Like iterating is the most important part of the whole journey. Like as I look through, like the evolution that we've had has come from just this mindset of like trying to just get things to work and testing. And if you're patient and you have a vision for what you want to accomplish and you feel purpose in what you're doing and you're fulfilled by it, like everything will work itself out, right? Just work really hard, be patient, be curious, and don't be afraid to like just go figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortcut, right? Like
Yeah,
you can be
there's
smart
no
about
shortcut.
it, but you just got to do it. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to ProfitLed and be notified of new episodes. Head over to our website, ProfitLed.fm, to see the show notes of this episode. Trevor, how can people connect with you and learn more about Nectar?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not sure what my / is, but just Trevor Larson and at Nectar. And yeah, that's probably the best way. You can DM me that way.
And the Nectar's website is
nectarhr.com.
Thanks for listening to ProfitLed. If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you will subscribe to the ProfitLed podcast and head over to our website, ProfitLed.fm, to see the show notes of every episode. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have interesting products and resources to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about. Thanks again for listening. Bye now.